Solar sales have come a long way. What started as a niche market with highly technical experts has transformed into a fast-growing industry with diverse approaches. Today, solar salespeople range from seasoned veterans who know every detail of a system design to charismatic closers who excel at simplifying just the financial benefits of a system. This variety has driven growth, but also introduced challenges. COVID-19 accelerated remote selling, showing us that virtual consultations can be just as effective as kitchen table conversations. Meanwhile, advancements in technology, from AI-driven design tools to integrated proposal software, are reshaping how sales reps approach their work. But with these changes come questions about what works, what doesn't, and how to balance speed with quality. Kelvin Hayes, the VP of Sales at Subcontractor Hub, has seen it all. From hands-on technical sales to managing high-volume teams, he understands the strengths and pitfalls of every approach. Today, we'll unpack the different sales personas in solar, the tools reshaping their success, and the lessons we can learn from the rise and fall of national solar contractors. Whether you're an industry veteran or new to the field, Kelvin's experience offers valuable takeaways for anyone navigating the world of solar sales. Together, we'll explore how to build trust, leverage technology, and ensure that the rapid growth of solar doesn't come out at the expense of its reputation. Welcome, Kelvin.
Jason, how are you, man?
Good. How are you today?
Oh, I'm awesome. Yeah, things are good. For those in the audience listening, I'm in South Lake Tahoe. The snow is supposed to start tomorrow. Our season of skiing and snowboarding is like right there. So got a lot to be grateful for and happy to be here today to talk shop with you, man.
That's awesome. Let's jump right in. Can you share a little bit about your journey in solar sales? Because you have worked at a couple of different places with, I think, really interesting roles, and then how that led you to the dark software side with Subcontractor Hub.
Yeah, I moved from being a gold miner, since I'm in California, that's relevant, to being the guy that's like, hey, here's your pan, go to work, And it's been an interesting journey. I think about where I started was as a homeowner direct sales rep for a channel sales partner of Solar City. So this was back in 2011. And we were focused on at the time, the brand new lease and PPA products that were finally making solar affordable for the homeowner. So that was quite let's just put it this way. We were teaching people about solar as much as we were talking about monthly payment. They had no concept of what it was or how it could work. And, the paradigm shift had only just begun at that point. So I worked there for a couple of years, cut my teeth, sold a bunch of solar, helped a bunch of people save money, and then decided to move into the hardware side of it. So I worked for a battery manufacturer, and this was right in 2015 when things were changing in California. And net metering was already a thing in Hawaii, and batteries were looking like that was the thing that was going to solve a lot of the problems. And so when I think about like the sales persona, I'm the technical guy. I was at the kitchen table and I was saying, hey, this is the duck curve. And when the sun goes down, what are you going to do with all this extra energy? And so I learned a lot working for a battery manufacturer, helping contractors essentially start to sell batteries with solar, which today now is almost becoming standard in certain markets. So did that, and then got back into the game as a sales rep, selling in-home with roofs and solar for a large contractor in California. So I sat at the kitchen table, and when I think back on that, I had this one client that I showed up at the door, and she had about 12 pug dogs in her living room, like going crazy. I'm trying to talk to her about the solar duck curve. One of them's over in the corner doing a number 2, and I'm just like, is this my life, man? Is this what I'm supposed to be helping people save money? But anyway, that sort of it was a wake up call for me to say, okay, maybe I want to get into the software space where I can work from home and help guys do what they do best, which is sell. So yeah, I've been on lots of different sides of it, and eventually got out on my own. So I decided, hey man, if all these companies are selling solar, why don't I just run my own dealership? And boy, if anyone's ever run a business before, I can tell you it is very, very, very hard. I have a ton of respect for it. But I learned so much about, what it takes to sell and acquire customers. And boy, it's the industry's really, it's come a long way. I had 7 installers and I had probably 25 logins, right? I had CRM, I had design tools, I had project management. It was a nightmare to know where each job was and what was happening. And we can, I'm sure, dive into more about how it's easier today for dealers than it's ever been. But I've been in the trenches with that. And then 2 years ago, got the call from our CEO, Justin Brock, who's been thinking about this stuff for years. How do we make the connections and how do we just make it easier to sell and easier to install? And he was speaking to me because I was a dealer at the time. And he said, hey, we have all these tools. Wouldn't you love if you were a dealer to have these? And I'd say, not only would I love it, I'd actually like to just empower everyone that I know to get these tools. So yeah, it's been a journey from, total newbie to running my own business and everything in between. And hopefully, our conversation today can bring some of those insights to people that can learn from my lumps.
Well, I love the analogy where you started of the gold miner now selling pans to them. You learn a lot on both sides of the equation.
You do. Yeah.
I like to think of solar having like upwards of 5 different sales persona in our industry, and I'll quickly walk through them. You've got the incredibly technical solar sales rep, often named the energy consultant, or even in some cases project manager. It sounds like you did this a fair amount. And they know the entire spectrum of the industry. They know all the hardware. They know how to talk shop. And some of them even do survey and design work. Kind of going down the spectrum of technical capability, you've got someone who can talk conceptually about the technical aspects, but really focuses their pitch a lot more on the financial benefits, the economics. We'll rope in some duck curve, in California, or battery attachment in Texas, but they might not make their full design. You've got the hardcore closer, number 3. They probably sold another technology or maybe alarms a couple weeks ago, right? They're handed a proposal and they're amazing at selling. It doesn't really matter what it is. It's the ice to the Eskimo type of person.
Yeah.
You've got your setter. And then I think more and more you have your homeowner as another sales persona with that D2C, tailwind that I think we're going to start seeing more and more. And so there's a variety of different types of personas, and I'm sure there's a bunch of things in between. I'd love to get your take on either the personas that I just outlined or how these different personas in our industry are shaping and affecting where solar sales is going into the future.
Yeah. I think there's space for every type. And I've sat alongside the guy that is very good at keeping it simple, like you said earlier. And I've watched them sell 25, 30 deals a month. And I'm over here talking about the duck curve and selling 6 or 7 deals, I think there is a buyer for every kind of persona. And I think what's really exciting is technology has come so far in making it easier for the customer to buy how they want to buy. So to your point, and really, if I go back to my days as a channel sales rep for Solar City, I mean, we were using Google Maps and we were drawing solar panels that totally were not to scale. I don't even know how those projects got through with any kind of accuracy. But that was for someone else to solve. So we had really crude tools at the time, and now you look today with the advent of AI designs and what Scanify is doing, and you start to see that a customer really could potentially sit on you could be at your coffee table on a Saturday morning, and you could make a purchasing decision for solar and do it with a really easy flow and high level of accuracy. So I think the personas, though, have really driven what the industry is solving for. If you look at a really high level, it's cleaner deals. Everyone wants cleaner deals. And if you look back 5 years ago, everyone just wanted deals. And now it's, can we get better compliance, like with better design accuracy, AI welcome calls, drone flights to make the imagery super accurate, and recheck for sales reps so that they're held accountable. I think everyone from the lender all the way to the customer wants and needs that, and that's going to be a really good thing I think technology will solve.
It's interesting to watch our industry evolve. I think that's one of the things you're really highlighting. And the term cleaner deals really stuck out for me. When I was speaking with an installer a couple of years ago, he noted that the 2010s in solar were all about sales, and the 2020s are going to be all about ops. And so I'd love your take on that philosophy and what a cleaner deal is.
Yeah. The most recent experience that we have, as you know, for a software platform, we sit between the money and the hammer or whatever you use to install. What we've seen be very interesting is now that lease and PPA products have come out, the need for a more accurate sales process has just come back to the forefront. And we talked to installers that had only sold loans until a year ago, and they would upgrade a customer from a 400 to a 410, thinking that they're doing the customer a solid, and we have to go talk to them and say, hey, that's a change order. You're going to have to totally re-sign that. So it's a paradigm shift in the way that I think deals get sold. So cleaner deals, I think, and you're totally spot on. If I'm an installer, I don't want 100 deals if 50 of them are going to cancel. That's a ton of cost for me and truck rolls that I need to deal with. So if I can trust my sales partners to use better technology to sell cleaner, and if they're held more accountable, I think then I start to run a more healthy install company. I'd rather take those jobs that I know are going to make it to install. And there's so many parts of the industry we could go into that are starting to facilitate that more. But yeah, cleaner deals is more the customers need to trust the process, and technology is going to help with that. And I think it's going to mean more people who sign get glass on the roof. And I think that's a win for everybody.
We were on a prior call and someone said that the cancellation rate from sign to permitting or PTO was a really big number.
Huge number.
I don't recall if it was 30% or 50%. And I don't know
I've seen
what
both.
time frame they were. Okay, you've seen both, which just baffles me. And my thought is, in the era of milestone payments from financing companies where reps and even installers in some cases got payment at M1 or M0, that fueled, I wouldn't really care if 30% gets canceled, because guess what? We're good. We're still making money. We can ignore the 20% that doesn't get any form of M2 or M3. It feels like there's a shift, though, because of the financing companies away from that. And that's also driving quality. What's your take on how finance companies are influencing cleaner deals, and not just TPO, but just in general?
In general, yeah, that has been one of the biggest shifts. From the EPC side, it's so painful. You went from having 25, 30% of your revenue collected early on to now you're kicking the can down the road. And then in California, for example, you're having to sell a battery, which is so much more complex of a sale than just solar, and more complex of an install. So your 30-day install becomes now 90 in some cases. So it's really painful. But I think ultimately, if we sit in the lender's chair for a second, they own this customer experience for life, right? And they need to know that the customer was brought into their world in a way that was above board. And so I think the lenders are driving the compliance as much as anyone else is. And so that's going to cascade down, because most customers need financing to buy solar. The figures I've seen is 10% buy with cash, and that fluctuates depending on market and how interest rates are. But financing is so critical. So I think the lenders are saying, we need to know that when Jason buys a solar system, that he knows what he was buying and that it was sold right. So some of the ways I think about that is, I used to sit at my computer and I would type in the usage, right? And I wanted to do it right because I was a technical guy. I was like, give me every detail possible, and I will make sure this thing is the Mona Lisa of systems for you. That's not everybody, for whether they're new or, whatever the deal is. So what we're doing at SubHub is we're bringing in the secure connection to the customer's utility profile. And so that builds the usage without the rep ever being able to touch it. And there's lots of ways along the way that we can use technology so that when the lender looks down the line, they say, hey, yeah, this customer really was sold the right way. And so that's what I'm excited for is it's going to take all types of salespeople because there's all kinds of buyers. But technology can really make it easier to speed things up, to make sure that the customer's more protected, and that drives trust too, right? I mean, if I know that I can trust my rep because everything was pulled from my utility account, and it goes along down the line, then I feel better as a consumer. Lenders feel better. I think ultimately it lowers the risk of buying solar for everybody. Lower risk means less costs. I think there's a lot of benefits to this need for cleaner deals and tech being a driver for that.
I couldn't agree more. So, Kelvin, you've worked both in that very technical sales role and also on that dealer model side. I'd love for you to walk us through some pros and cons of how sales orgs are helping accelerate our industry, but also some of the challenges that they bring in and what your philosophy on them are in general.
Yeah, I think sales teams are vital to the industry. And, they're doing really challenging work, which is acquiring the customer's interest. And that's really expensive. And I think that's a thing that everyone wants to solve for is how do you make it more affordable to get in front of your customer. And a tangent that I'll try not to go on too much with that is that we're seeing the high quality regional installers become the popular choice. In years past, you had the mega 25, 30 state installer, and they have tremendous momentum and backing and huge teams. And yet you go online and look at their reviews and it's 2 stars. The customer experience never got really solidified in that. And when you can sell as a sales org to a reliable local partner with a 5-star review, again, back to the trust thing. Like, clients trust you, your jobs are going to get done right. So anyway, I'll stop myself from going down that tangent, but the sales orgs are vital. And I think the challenge that they face is twofold. One, it has been very disjointed to sell as a team. Like I'd mentioned earlier, you want to have a bunch of different partners. One's good at ground mounts, one's good at roof mounts, kind of thing. But when you have 20 different logins, it gets really hard to build a team. So that's one thing that SubHub, I think, is doing really well is we're giving it one login for a sales team to go sell to, a bunch of different installers, and it makes it super easy. The challenge, though, for the sales org is a lot of the folks that are selling, they might be knocking doors. They're younger. They don't know anything about solar or how to design. And so this is where tech comes in. Can we have a one button design that's assisted by AI? Can you have somebody that, like in your case, can learn how to fly a drone in, a day and get the most accurate imagery possible that makes their back-end process better? So I think again, technology to beat that drum is huge in making it easier for people to do both sides of the equation. But yeah, I think what you will see though, if you're a sales organization, is compliance is going to drive how you sell. So we talked about recheck. If you think about it, you go to get a mortgage, you're going to talk to somebody with a license. And I think it's going to go that direction, and for good reason. Those who are making a healthy living, being the tip of the spear, should also be held accountable. So I think we're going to see that shift over the next year. And, we work with tremendous sales orgs that are very forward leaning on that. They want the cleanest deals possible. To your point, they don't want 50% cancellation rates. They want all their jobs to go through. And the best way to do that is, I think, to make sure everyone's accountable.
I've heard that referrals and the leads that come from it can lead to a 50% close rate for that type of deal.
Mm-hmm.
And so for a sales org that is pounding the pavement hardcore and winning those tough customers, having them really lean into a quality job done by a quality EPC facilitates so much more momentum and velocity for their future sales. It's really critical.
Yeah.
And so in many ways, sales and ops, sales orgs and EPCs, they have to go hand in hand.
Yeah.
From a sales org's perspective too, in many ways that sales rep acts as kind of a secondary project manager. It's their relationship. And because of the value of the referrals, that relationship is more critical than ever.
Yeah.
And I think we're starting to see that play out in this next phase of the solar industry.
We are. What really surprises me is I probably worked with, I don't know, maybe 300 or 400 contractors as a part of our work with Subcontractor Hub. And I always ask them, what is your referral strategy? And 9 times out of 10, I mean, it's a huge number. They don't have a strategy in place for that. And I've been a rep. I know when the phone's ringing and you have 40 new leads this month, you're not calling your deals that didn't close a month ago. You're too busy. And so that's something that I personally am so passionate about because, there's tools. We have tools now where your website can help re-engage that customer with AI and bring it back. And it brings it right back to the rep. So the rep's not losing out. They're getting the benefit of tech to help, re-engage that customer. And to your point, ask for referrals. A story that I always love to tell. In fact, so Justin Brock, our CEO, he and I worked together at this channel sales for Solar City. We were just 2 cubicles apart. That's where we got our start. And so the tangled web of solar always brings people back
Small
together.
industry. It's so
it's a small
It's
industry,
crazy.
man. It is. It is. But anyway, he had a client who didn't end up qualifying for solar. She was in Arizona, but she loved the concept. And so he was like, hey, if you just go out and knock doors, talk to your friends and family, like, I'll give you $500 per deal. And she went out and got, I think it was like 27, 28 deals closed for Justin. She'd never bought solar, but she just was an evangelist for it and had a huge network and just was, she was doing side hustle money promoting solar. So to your point, it always blows my mind, man. Like, how do you not mine for the gold? It's literally sitting there. It's your customers, it's your database. These guys are tremendous at being on the roof, but it takes, I think, technology to contribute and say, hey, let's make it so easy that you don't even have to think about it, and the customers are going to come right back to you. So
Right.
We'd love to see referrals be a bigger part because it's trust, it's feeding the engine of commerce. It's a big deal.
The thing that excites me most about referrals and that orientation is that I think what was selling solar a couple of years ago is not quite selling solar today. And what I mean by that is you're selling electrification today. And so it might be a solar only deal, but you're probably going to sell a battery in the next few years in most markets. You're definitely going to sell an EV charger in the next few years. You might be selling heat pumps or roofs or other things, right? You hear about people selling TPO products with a re-roof and solar as part of it. So it's important to have a good experience, a clean deal, a smooth process, the right technology, especially from a sales rep's perspective. And I'm not just even talking about your commission today and how that affects your commission, what a change order can do, a delay. It's your next commission because that easy referral that comes in or that upsell that comes in a couple of years, it's all there and it's all connected. Yeah. And that's, I think, a very different part about selling solar now than in the past.
It absolutely is. So I have a really fond memory. When I was doing the in-home sales, we had 4 products, which at the time was pretty unique. We had roof, solar, we had batteries, and then fences, oddly enough. I had a customer in the Bay Area. I sit down with her and she just called to talk about solar. And then I'm going, man, this roof is a little sketchy. And, I was able to look at it and had the training to know that this asphalt roof had seen better days. So I'm like, why don't we just do both at the same time in the same loan? And then I talked about the duck curve and I was like, hey, this is going to be coming. So we could also do this. And then our fence is leaning. And I'm like, look, we don't have to do anything. I just want you to be clear. Like, I'm happy to I could drive away and you have all the information, or we could do all of this in one loan. And so we ended up doing it. And it was dubbed the Forfecta because not often did that happen. Lots of things have to line up, loan amount and interest and all that. But I think where that goes is spot on. The industry wants clean deals. Sure. If you drill down to the guys that are boots on the roof, they need different ways to make money and bring value to the customer. So what we're seeing is a guy that's great at solar, he can sell roofs right through Subcontractor Hub to a licensed contractor. And so now he's making additional revenue for his reps off of the same address, and he doesn't need to build a whole new business unit for himself, or maybe he can work towards it. And that's just going to expand. We're going to see windows, HVAC, everything home improvement, I think is where this is headed. And it should be, right? I mean, solar is a one-time sale, but lots of these products potentially are reasons to come back to customers. So that is, I mean, this is me nerding out like with technology, is if we could give the tools like we're doing for solar and roofing contractors to all home improvement, we're hitting the entire industry and multiple industries across the nation.
This echoes my sentiment that solar is really just another home improvement project.
Yeah,
I know that it's
really
cool and we love it and it's exciting, but it's a home improvement project at the end of the day. Let's not overdo it, right?
Yeah.
It also reminds me of a similar story in PG&E territory. An installer we met with was selling solar, battery, and Generac all roped in, and it was called the FPG&E sale. So, there's a similar bundling that's been there for a long time. Whether you buy it now or you buy it in phases, it's important to have a great process on the selling side and the ops side, so you make sure you have that upselling motion at one point.
Yeah, I love that. I think there's a lot of potential behind that as a marketing employee. You might get a few phone calls from PG&E, but
yeah, we'll see. I want to go back to your hilarious 12 dogs story and your remote selling experience.
That scarred me for life, man. That was a similar moment for me. I'm like, I think virtual sales is where I need to be.
Yeah.
Or I need to get a little pooper scooper.
Yeah. What's your take on it, though? In all seriousness, I'd love your take on remote selling versus in person, because we've heard the total spectrum of perspectives. And I think obviously there's a catch-all, but I'm looking for a little bit of a spicier take if you've got one
want a hot take,
on remote versus in person. Yeah.
I mean, I am personally a strong believer in tech, and I think, I work remotely. Lots of people do post-COVID, and we're almost more effective than we were driving to an office. I think virtual selling there's more tools to do that today that are great. Obviously, proposal tools, but we have great HD quality imagery that we can connect with customers. It's less costly. I mean, I used to drive from, if people are familiar with California, Modesto to Yuba City. I mean, we're talking 2.5 hours in traffic, 3 hours in traffic between appointments in a green industry, which is supposed to be saving the planet. So I think there's a huge case to be made for the virtual sale, and we're seeing it. Lots of guys still knocking doors. It's super effective, but if you can have a team that is virtually selling, you can expand your territories. You can work more deals. I could only take 1 or 2 appointments every day max. If I'm in a comfy chair, I could take 4 or 5. So I think there's a business case for it for sure as well. So
I almost wonder also if homeowners prefer it, right? Think about people who have complicated schedules, or they have kid bedtime, or whatever it is. Dogs pooping in the corner, like you talked about.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. Right.
They don't want you in their house either.
They don't. They're like, I've tried to teach that dog to not do that, and they're embarrassed for sure. Yeah. No, I think you're spot on. And I mean, for me as a rep, you'd show up occasionally and they wouldn't be home, and great, I just drove 2 hours for nothing. But I think it's better for everyone. And I'm in that category. Like I buy everything online. I'm of that generation. And so, when I buy a solar system for my house, I don't even want to talk to anybody, frankly. I'd rather just go online and use a design tool and get it done, so.
There will be an interesting world of D2C that I think is coming. We'll get to that in a second. What I will say, though, on this topic of remote selling is, like any home improvement project, someone technical needs to come to the site before install day, and in
Mm-hmm.
theory before permitting.
Mm-hmm.
That's at least where I draw my line. We have spoken to installers who the first time they reach the site is install day, and the amount
Yeah.
of call-offs, revisions, overpromise and underdeliver, I think that's where we actually make a bad name for ourselves in our industry.
Mm-hmm.
So I have no issue with remote selling. I think it's incredibly effective, high velocity. It's more engaging for some people. There's more flexibility. It's greener.
Yeah.
But then it has to be couched with this design is an estimate. There might be a change order, just so you know. I hope not, but there could be a tolerance in which we are changing things. We will be sending a super knowledgeable site survey tech after we sign to fine tune everything. It reminds me of if you were to buy a new kitchen. Does anyone buy a new kitchen remotely? Someone is coming to get cabinet measurements, right? You're buying a new bathroom. Are you buying all of it remotely? You might choose your inventory remotely, but someone has to measure the distance between the toilet and the wall and the sink, right?
100%.
And so as long as there is one person getting real measurements, real shading analysis in our world, right? I'm fine with remote selling. I just think that to make sure that we do right by both installer and EPC and homeowner and finance company, all of the key people involved, we need to make sure that it's going to fit on install day, that we're delivering what we promised to the end customer.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think where we're excited to help contractors, help the whole supply chain work on this is imagine for a second that the site survey is almost like how Lyft and Uber are today, where you're an installer, you have a site survey. Instead of the truck being yours and having to roll it, you just queue up somebody who's local in the area that can run over in the next 30 minutes, has a drone in their trunk, can fly it, measure it. It all gets uploaded via their cell phone or their tablet. And now the contractor is operating more asset light than they would normally. Then you start to get exciting opportunities, right? I mean, the days of an installer owning everything end to end and all the cost and insurance, everything that goes along with that. If they can compress some of that by having great service providers, that's part of our long-term vision and how we want to help people. Sales is great, important, but to your point, where the rubber meets the road or the glass hits the roof is in the accuracy on the back end. So yeah, I think somebody has to be on site, and especially in battery markets. Like I don't want to have a customer walk out and say, is that a 400 amp service or is that a 200? Like anything below the main service disconnect, and you're in the deep end with them in terms of if they're telling you the right info. So I totally agree with that.
Yeah, and in some ways too, I think you need someone who is, especially battery markets, has some electrical knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Because if you have a main service panel upgrade and you miss that, that's potentially most of the margin on your sale.
Yep.
And that is incredibly frustrating for everyone. Or if you miss the tree that was there, and really you're losing 20% on your shading values, that is a clawback, or at least a massive reduction in change orders that sales rep commission and EPC and everyone is going to have to pay. So I think the model of asset light will absolutely work, but we have to have a minimum of technical capabilities to ensure that those issues don't happen. And of course, if you're in Arizona in the middle of Phoenix and there's barely any tall trees and it's mostly A-frame Pueblo roofs, like, sure. But if you're in Massachusetts or Washington State, old housing stock, things aren't outside. You got to go into the basement and move over your bookcase and move the laundry basket. Like, obviously there's market dependencies, but at the end of the day, you want to have a smooth process.
That's why we believe the smaller regional guys are so essential, is that every solar system is totally unique. It's a very difficult product to scale as a construction company nationwide. People are doing it, have done it, and more power to them. But yeah, you need the technical expertise for sure. And I don't know, if I was an installer, I'd probably say, hey, if you want to sell this deal, you're fly a drone before you sell it, but I don't know, that's my style. And, I'm more on the quality over quantity kind of approach, but it's going to take both sides for sure.
Yeah. And it depends on the business and their close rates. We are seeing, we have gotten several anecdotes of increased close rates from flying a drone at either closing or a little bit earlier. Because it's visual, it's experiential, there's no change orders, and then it also hits glass on the roof much faster. But there is an upfront cost and technical expertise needed from that sales rep. but it might be more and more common. And honestly, by the way people pay for leads right now or pay for other things pre-signing, it's
Hmm.
actually not that expensive. But
Yeah.
I think it's going to be rep dependent.
Yeah, that's for sure. One of the things that I think is, back to your point of like it's expensive, and it is to especially to acquire leads. If you can if you can kind of mesh the customer journey together in a smoother way, I think you're on to something. And so what I think is, if I'm a customer, Jason shows up, he flies a drone. I go, whoa, that's cool. This guy is really detail oriented, and I actually can trust that this is going to go well, And then that ties into a platform like Subcontractor Hub, where when the job moves to permitting, Mr. Customer gets a text message and it says, hey, your job's at permitting. Congratulations. Click here for more. Send referrals. Shoot, I'm going to send my neighbor. This is smooth. This is great. I trust the process. And then you get to install, and everyone's in that ecosystem is enjoying the experience, versus like what you had said a little earlier, the sales rep being like a project manager. That happened all the time, man. And my customer would call me and say, hey, where's my project at? Even though there's a project manager working on it, I get the call and I don't know, because I'm trying to log into a CRM, and the customer's pissed because they haven't heard from us in 2 weeks, even though we're working on it. So this is all like scar tissue for me from years of wishing that the industry was smoother. But now you've got like what we're doing with you guys, with Scanify and SubHub together, where I think you're going to start to see the experience for the customer really be so much more seamless, and that's exciting.
Agreed. One more question for you as we wrap up here. You've talked a lot about being very technologically oriented, which I think is fantastic. Where do you see the future of solar sales going, and what innovations are you most excited about as it relates to that?
Yeah, I'm going to sound so cliche with this. I thought about what I'm excited about and what the industry needs, and everyone is talking about two letters right now, AI. Everyone thinks that in all ways that's going to be the savior, and I think it will be. I think AI design, like we were talking about earlier, come in, sit on the couch, drink your coffee, click a button, solar system's there, I order it, guy with a drone comes out tomorrow. That kind of flow. I think AI is going to absolutely change the game there. And then, the sales rep being able to get their customer back on the phone by a text message campaign that's built in, like all that stuff. I think AI is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting. You'll still need people all throughout the process, though. There's no doubt about that. I don't see a world where there's robots on the roof in the near term that are doing the actual install. So I think that's what I'm most excited about is, selfishly, like, dude, I want to just be hanging out watching football, and I build my solar system like I build my F-150, and right, like it's just easier that way. And then I decide when somebody gets in the mix with me to help me through certain parts of the process. So I think that's exciting. I think financing is an interesting part of this world. And, again, I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, but is there a way for the contractor to take more ownership, literally, of the customer journey? If I'm going to sell roof and HVAC and solar, what if I also could benefit from the customer being a customer of this lease or PPA for 25 years? And you go from just this hand to mouth kind of approach as a contractor to building a business that has revenue that's being generated over time. So that's interesting, and I think there's some players in the market that are starting to dip their toe in the water there. So I think that's going to be helpful, more healthy for the industry. But I don't know. Yeah, what do you think? I mean, I know this is a conversation. Where do you, if you had a crystal ball, what's the next couple of years look like?
I think that whatever technologies out there help solve cleaner deals while maintaining sales velocity
Mm-hmm.
is going to win out. I think historically our industry has been very sales oriented at all costs. And I understand the importance to have gotten us to an economies of scale
Yeah.
where hardware costs are suppressed and we're continuing to lower that levelized cost of energy, right?
Yeah.
Um, but the remaining piece that can have a massive compression on the cost side is the soft costs. And I think things that drive that down and still maintain speed is important. What I'm hopeful and what I'm starting to see the seedlings of it, and I'm hopeful, and of course there's bias for me, is that people aren't just thinking about how do we improve sales with technology, but how do we improve the whole process with technology in such that it returns back to helping sales as well. And so whether it's customer experience or O&M or using drones to get people off the roof and get more accurate deals so you don't have re-permitting revisions, et cetera, I think there's innovations across the value chain that all lead to helping more sales. And the more people realize that solar is viable and that it is cost effective and that there's either financing solutions or it makes sense to own it yourself, I think that will further accelerate the selling motion. Even byproducts like EVs growing, and therefore you need more electricity, solar will grow. So I know it's not a direct answer with a key technology, but I think about this a little bit more holistically. I think these sales personas are here to stay. I think it's kind of a catch-all of strategies. I think people are going to figure out what works for them, their business model, their market, and that diversity is critical. But to your point, there will be different technologies across the value chain that will all roll back up to getting better, cleaner deals first. And then that will make everything smoother.
Yeah, that is super interesting. You're getting the sales persona bought in that the operations team isn't a barrier to their success. And then there's often there's that friction between I'm selling deals, man, I'm on the phone, and ops is like, gosh, your deals are so bad. And then there's that disconnect, but you're saying bring it together, lock hands, lock arms, and use tech as a way to drive that.
I think tech is the only way to drive that, actually.
Yeah.
When we speak with finance companies about the data that's submitted and then in how the reviewers really struggle, both with changing requirements from their managers, but then also the crap stuff that they have to look at every day. Yeah. And then when I talk to the installers or the EPCs or the dealers who are waiting for payment and they're trying the best that they can, and they feel like no matter what, that finance company is going to renege on payment or delay it or reject it or just say, hey, you know what, we can't pay you for 4 weeks. Sorry.
Yep. Yeah.
That's real friction and real distrust. And I actually think that only technology, AI being a subset, but only technology can solve that systemic friction. And so I think that's one of the things we've been excited about working with you guys on.
Yeah. And, one other thing, I know we're riffing on this, that I think, so the contractor has the hardest job. They're the ones literally in the blistering sun, putting the system on. And in some cases, most cases, their margins are the smallest. And so if I'm a guy that's installing and the money is hard to come by and it's thin when I get it, I think about how can, if I'm the guy installing and I'm hearing about tech, all I'm thinking about is cost. And the way that historically the market's been is let me pay a ton of money for my design tool up front before I even make a penny. And then let me wait until install to get paid. And then PTO has to come before it. What I think is exciting is, okay, let's bring it all together, but also let's help rethink how you charge the guy that's doing the actual work. And that piece to me is part of what fires me up with Subcontractor Hub and with Scanify is, you don't need to pay for proposals to be effective, and you shouldn't really have to. What you should be paying for is success, because that's when the lender pays you. And so I think our mission is let's not cost the contractor as much when we give them tech, and let's bring it together when they actually get their piece. And I think if you can do that, and you bring the cost down, bring it to when the milestone is there, and it makes it easier for everybody, now you're cooking with gas.
It's awesome. I love it. So if we have some takeaways here, we're in agreement that we need all the different sales personas to continue moving our industry forward. Tech and finance companies are going to be influencing cleaner deals, and that is definitely a theme that we want to see inform sales processes going forward. Remote is definitely a game changer. No one needs to see the doggy poo in the corner or any of that. Everyone wants the flexibility. Everyone wants opportunities, but there needs to still be some type of face-to-face before install day. It is a home improvement project. Let's not overdo it here, right?
Yeah.
A technical survey, so it all works, is critical. I think it's important for salespeople to stay salespeople. They don't need to be project managing everything. There's a velocity uptick. There's a do what you do best approach. And then the last thing I think we definitely agree on is that AI is going to be a huge driver.
Yep.
It's not going to replace people, but it will certainly accelerate deals. It's going to allow for a faster approach to getting glass on the roof, solving climate change, all the other benefits.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Kelvin, thank you so much for your time and for joining us today.
Yeah, Jason, I appreciate it as well. Keep up the good fight, man.
You as well. Thanks a lot.